All right, I'm going to get started here. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this mini masterclass in how to develop your personal brand. So, we're going to go through definitions, we're going to go through the process of how to articulate your brand or develop your brand principles. Okay. So, I'm going to share my screen with you to take you some slides. And at the end, I'm hoping that we have time for some fantastic questions, which I would love to answer. The Q&A, for those of you who have ever been in my classes before, you know the Q&A is my favorite. This is where the good stuff happens. So hopefully we'll have lots of time for that. If you have questions or issues along the way, drop it into the chat. When I'm sharing my screen, I think sometimes I can't actually see the questions in the chat, but someone will alert me. Okay. So and if you haven't already introduced yourself and see, we've got people from New York, the Bay Area. I'm in Toronto, so it is noon here, but I know it's not for everybody. The East Coast, Montreal, and so on. Let people know where you're from. That's right, you're in Texas, Solange. What's the temperature there? I bet it's hot, 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 hot. Yeah. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna get started and share my screen now. Can I get head nods from it? I can see 3 faces, so if I get head nods from you, can I get some head nods? Can you see this? Strategic principles of personal branding? Yes. Thank you. If you haven't already connected with me on LinkedIn, please do so. And as many of you know, I have a podcast with well over 150, 160 something episodes now. It's a bi-weekly podcast. I have the Apple icon here, but it's on Spotify, it's on YouTube now, and just about any other podcasting platform you can think of. This is free coaching from me. And the other thing is, if you go to talkabouttalk.com, you can also get free coaching from me. Every second week, you get an email with 3 points from me, just things to think about, things to consider. Sometimes it's a quote, it's a reference to a learning from a podcast episode or something. If you go to talkabouttalk.com and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get access to that as well. Okay, let's jump into this topic of personal branding. I want to start by saying I'm an executive communication coach, right? And when I started focusing on coaching executives on elevating their communication skills, I was focused on topics like confidence and storytelling and listening and formal presentation skills and all of the topics that you would probably expect, right, from a communication coach. And then based on my background, where, I was a brand manager at Kraft Foods, and then I got my doctorate at Harvard Business School in marketing from the business school, and then I was teaching marketing at the University of Toronto. Over time, this topic of personal branding started to take more and more, prominence in terms of the topics that I was doing speaking on and podcasting and workshops and coaching. And this is the topic easily that gets the most traction with my clients. Sometimes in the coaching session or a year later, even, I'll get emails from people and they'll say, Andrea, what you taught me and what we developed in terms of my personal brand really has had a huge impact on my career and even on my life. So I realize I'm setting the bar really high here, but I just wanted to explain how personal branding relates to my role as a executive communication coach and my background and kind of how I got there. You all took time out of your very busy schedules to spend an hour here to learn about focusing on your personal brand. So I'm guessing you have some idea of what it is, but we all might have a different idea, right? And I'm not here to tell you what the right definition or the wrong definition of a personal brand is, but I'm going to tell you what I mean and what I don't mean. So I'm going to start with what I don't mean. I don't mean personal branding as in turning you into a social media influencer. I also don't mean inventing anything. So a couple years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, Masterclass introduced the personal branding masterclass hosted by the Kardashian matriarch, Kris Jenner. And I thought, this is fantastic, but I bet I know what this is going to be about. So she spent a little bit of time focusing on her story and then a lot of time focusing on how to get followers on social media. So this is not to say that you couldn't do this if you work with personal branding the way that I would be coaching you, but it's not necessarily our end goal, okay? Neither is monetizing you and your brand. So clearly for Jay-Z, he says, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business. And I love this is a lyric from one of his songs. It's become a quote. And I think it's very clever. But again, this is not our end goal. We're not here to monetize your brand and make you millions. I mean, I'd rather you had millions than didn't, but this isn't necessarily our end goal. If when you're thinking about personal branding, you're thinking, well, it's got to be similar to product branding, right? Where we're thinking about reputation and identity. Yes, that is how I think about personal branding. So as I shared at the beginning, my background is in brand management, and I did my doctorate in marketing, and then I taught marketing. So, branding and marketing is kind of my wheelhouse. You can most, if not all, of the strategic principles of how you develop a product brand and apply them to you, right? So you have a target market. Who's your target market? You have a value proposition. What is your value proposition? In case you're curious, this term personal branding has been around for over a century, but it was in 1997, so just over 25 years ago, that the infamous Tom Peters wrote this article in Fast Company where he really kind of put a stake in the ground about making personal branding part of what executives talk about. Is anybody else getting a weird feedback in the audio, like a gurgling in the background? No?
But it's not
Yes.
too disruptive.
Yes, very mild.
Okay. If anyone doesn't have, thank you. If anyone doesn't have, put it on mute. If you're not already on mute, please put yourself on mute. Okay. It's not me because it's not correlating with me moving something, so I'm not sure. So until recently, this was the definition of personal branding that I always used. And now it's gone from being a definition to more like a mental exercise. So here's the mental exercise. Jeff Bezos says that your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So here's the mental exercise. Ask yourself, what does your boss and your boss's boss say about you when they're in the room talking about who to promote, right? Once or twice a year, or maybe more frequently, I don't know. They sit down and they talk about who's getting promoted into what position, right? Or maybe you're on the job market and you're looking for a new job and you have an interview, and then the person interviews and a bunch of people interview you, right? And then they go into a room and they talk about the candidates. What they think and say about you, that is your personal brand. So some of you, if I can guess and I can see by the look on some people's faces, you're like, oh boy, I got some work to do. That's why we're here. Don't worry. We have a plan to attack. Usually there's a discrepancy between what other people are saying and thinking about us and what they want them to say and think about us. My definition, after coaching several hundred, maybe thousand, if you include workshops and speaking, my definition of personal branding or developing your personal brand, it's about being yourself on purpose. The being yourself part is, I want to make it really clear, you're not acting, you're not inventing, you're not creating like a work persona and a personal persona or an at-home persona. This is you and yourself and your whole self. We'll get into that in a minute when we talk about the strategic principles. So it is your authentic and true self on purpose. So in capitals, this is where the magic happens. I think so many of us feel overwhelmed about how to develop our personal and professional, our personal brand and our professional identity, that we don't really know where to begin. And we think maybe it's like this thing where we have to act a certain way, but we really don't know what to do. I can take you through steps, step by step, for how to do this on purpose. And the other thing is, this is in capitals. We are making absolutely no apologies for the fact that we are being strategic and disciplined about developing our personal brand. Okay, so why would we do this? What, Andrea, you said, more so than confidence, more so than listening, more so than storytelling, more so than public speaking. Personal branding is the topic that gets the most traction with my clients easily. So why is that? What are the benefits? For those of you who listen to my podcast, I'm a huge fan of the power of three. It's always three. Someone told me when I was in a workshop recently, a couple of years ago, actually, they said, I was talking about the power of three, and she said she read some research where Humans' brains are wired so that if they hear something that's two, their brain will invent a third, or if they hear four things, their brain will discount one of them. So, I mean, I don't need convincing. I'm a huge fan of the power of three. I have 3 kids. I know from if you're giving a recommendation to your boss, if you're providing 3 benefits, if you're figuring out how many paragraphs to put in your essay, whatever it is, just make 3 your default. Okay. That's just a little bonus coaching you got from me. Okay, back to the 3 benefits of developing your personal brand. These are the things that I see over and over and over again. The first one is you're developing your personal brand provides you with the opportunity to control your narrative. So what do I mean by that? You've probably got some phrases and words that you use in your self-introduction, right? Or that you just think about yourself as your skills or your strengths. When we take the time to sit down and prioritize what our expertise is, what our passions are, what our traits are, the things that are really important that we want to reinforce, we can also come up with the words and the phrases that can make these things serve us. So I have a quick story that I'm going to share with you about this. Some of you may have heard this. I think I shared it in the podcast called Control Your Narrative, which is one of the most downloaded episodes. Is when I released that episode, I ended up, this always happens when one's really hot. I get a lot of emails from people saying, thank you, that was amazing. So that's what happened with this one. Here's the story. It was an open Q&A on personal branding on the Fishbowl app, for any of you that have heard of Fishbowl. And it was, anyone could get up on stage and ask me a question. And this woman got up on stage and she said, as you can tell by my accent, I'm an immigrant from India. I live in New York and I'm a lawyer. And I want my brand to evolve to be something more impressive than immigrant. And she said, right now, when I think about my brand and when other people think about me, they just think immigrant. And I was like, wow, okay. So first of all, yes, you have an accent, but I can understand you very clearly. And I want to share something with you. I've done some research on this because a lot of people try to erase their accents. As long as people can understand you, there's absolutely no reason to do that. People don't think positively or negatively about you as long as they can understand you. If you make it hard for people to understand you, that's a different story. But I can understand you. You have excellent English. Don't worry about that. And she said, okay, but still this immigrant thing. And I said, I want you to control your narrative. I want you to stop using the word immigrant in reference to yourself. If someone else says it, fine. But you can almost correct them. You wouldn't say, well, that's not what I am, but you can correct them by sharing the narrative that you want to reinforce about yourself. So I said, let me ask you a few questions. You're in New York. Where in New York? And she said, I'm in Manhattan. And I said, okay. And what kind of law do you practice? And she said, corporate law. And I said, okay, so the next time you introduce yourself to a room with clients or colleagues or whoever it is, you just say, I'm a corporate lawyer in Manhattan with global experience, period. And your accent is a reminder of your global experience. So she was absolutely thrilled with this. And she said, you're right. It is evidence. My accent is evidence of my global experience. So I tell you this story because her narrative was immigrant, immigrant, immigrant. And we changed that from focusing on her personal brand to a corporate lawyer in Manhattan with global experience, right? And then she could talk about her growing up in India, what she learned there and how that provided her with global experience, and she has connections, whatever, right? So you can elaborate from there. But the idea here is that you have an opportunity when you focus on your personal brand to your strengths and sometimes even the things that you may perceive as weaknesses. I've seen this countless times. There are things that people are maybe trying to hide about themselves that end up being their biggest strength, as long as we can control the narrative around it, right? Okay, so the first benefit, I could go on, is you have the opportunity to control your narrative. The second thing is, when we take the time to develop your personal brand, we're not saying that you're good at everything, okay? You see the third benefit here is boosting your confidence, but that's not the only goal that we have here. We also want to provide you with focus and direction. We want to identify the skills, the attributes, the experiences, the passions, the personality traits about you and focus on those things. So you're not saying you're good at everything, but you sure are good at these things, right? And it's importantly distinct from just trying to boost your confidence. And my clients tell me that this provides them with great direction and focus, especially when they have decisions to make about what job to take, or even what job to apply for, or what project to volunteer for at work, right? If it's aligned with your personal brand, you'll know right away. Yes, I was coaching a woman who we ended up identifying that her superpower is creating impact. She's a consultant, so her job as a consultant was really ideal for her, because she can create impact internally at her organization and externally with her clients. And she said, identifying creating impact as her superpower really helps her make decisions, because she gets overwhelmed with requests internally for things to do in the organization. And right away, she thinks to herself, can I create impact here? Like big impact? Yes or no? If it's yes, I do it. If it's no, I pass it on to someone else. Okay, so the second benefit is it provides you with direction. The third benefit I've already mentioned. Everybody tells me this. When you've articulated your personal brand, again, you're not saying you're good at everything, but you are identifying the things you're good at. This has got to boost your confidence. I had one client that was an event planner, event manager, and she was planning and managing this massive event in Las Vegas. And we created a personal branding template for her. I'm going to share mine with you in a minute. And she taped it on the desk. You know, in your hotel room, when you check into your hotel, there's like usually a little table by the front door where everyone puts their card key or whatever. She taped her personal branding template there. So every time she left the room to go out into the conference that she led, the last thing she would see was her personal branding template. And that boosted her confidence and provided her with focus and direction. And it even helped her control her narrative, because she had words on there that were the words that she was using to describe herself. Okay. So how do we do this? We've got the definition now. It's about being yourself on purpose. We've got the 3 benefits or reasons why you would do it. How about the process? I really like to simplify things, and I would say there's 2 steps. Step 1 is articulating or creating your brand, and step 2 is communicating it. Most other coaches will skip right to step 2, or they'll gloss over step 1, right? And my theory is garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out. If we spend lots of time articulating and creating your brand, then the communicating part comes really easy. Of course, we're going to get into this in a second too. You're constantly updating it, so it's not like 1, 2, and you're done. But if you just think about it in terms of these 2 steps, I think that's very helpful. So a long time ago, I created my own personal brand, and over time, I have updated it over and over again. This is what my personal branding template looks like as of today. Tomorrow, it might change, right? And so over time, I edit what the boxes say, I merge them, I delete. I used to have on the bottom row, you can see I have some personal things on the bottom. I used to have mom of 3 tall teenagers. Now I say 3 tall kids, because one of them's 20, right? So, things happen in your life. We're going to get into this in a minute, but your personal brand can and should change over time. The idea here is that we can select what parts of our personal brand we share with people. So it's not like when I introduce myself, I'm sharing all of these things with everyone. But let's get into the strategic principles. The reason that I share my personal brand with you is really 2 reasons. One, I want you to get to know me a little better, and this is a pretty darn quick way for you to get to know me. The other thing is, I know you're smart enough to look at any one of these boxes and say, oh, I see a box there that's got talk about talk. That's her company. What's my company or place of employment, or what do I do, right? So you'd be smart enough to say, okay, so that's going to be one of the boxes in my personal brand, right? Or in the bottom corner, you see the geography. I grew up in Calgary. I'm Canadian. It doesn't come up with everyone, but it does come up. You might think about what role geography has played in your life, or what role it does play in your life, and make that one of your boxes. You get the idea. Okay, I'm going to take you through the 3 principles. First and foremost, if there's one thing you're going to take from this live training session, this is it. Like, take the screenshot. Focus on what makes you unique. So many people make the mistake of copying others, and you can understand why. We are social learners, right? You look around. Oh, you see, so-and-so just got promoted. What does she do? She speaks eloquently, and she always speaks up in meetings. I'm going to try doing that, right? Or what is it about this other gentleman that is so impressive that has made him so successful? And we copy people. It's human nature. So, if you don't do it, it's you're definitely the anomaly. But here's the insight. Unique is better than better. If you focus on what makes you unique and you control the narrative around it, right? And you reinforce it in everything that you say and do, you're going to end up being happier and more successful than just about anyone. If you think about the happy and successful people that you know, personally and professionally, they're the ones that are focused on their unique strengths. Okay? So the first principle is you focus on what makes you unique. The second principle is we're talking about your whole self and your authentic self. Like I said at the beginning, this is not reinventing things. This is not acting a certain way. This is the true you, the true, authentic, and the whole you. So the whole you, as in personally and professionally. If you look at my personal branding document on the right, you might notice that I have more personal things on the bottom. So I have I'm a color, I'm a painter, fitness and enjoying the outdoors, mom of 3 kids, Calgary in Canada. I have the personal things at the bottom. That's not because they're less important. It's because this document I've created specifically as my professional identity. And for a professional biography, I would start out with the things that are at the top and then slowly, if it was like a long form bio that was written about me, at the end, they say in her spare time, she enjoys painting, fitness and enjoying the outdoors. She's also the mom, blah, 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 right? So we try to make it as easy as possible for ourselves by putting the personal things at the bottom, but make no mistake, your personal brand, including when it comes to your professional identity, includes these personal things. So I'm going to say something a little personal right now. My son, who's 20, is going into his 4th year of college. He's going to college in the States. And he shared his 1-page resume with me a couple nights ago and asked me to help him edit it. And I tore it apart, as you might imagine. But I said to him, you went to an impressive school and you're an impressive kid, but there's nothing here that tells me anything about your personality. Now, his response was, Mom, it's an algorithm and I need to get the keywords in. And I, these are all keywords where I have skills. And I said, yes. So that maybe that'll get you the first interview, but for the second interview, you need to have interesting things. I said, when I was his age, the bottom line of my resume said, skated in the closing ceremonies of the 1988 Olympics and carried the Canadian flag into the stadium. Every single interview that I got, when I went in, they said, Andrea, before we get into this, tell us about your Olympic experience. And I said, well, I was not an Olympic athlete. I was not a competitor, but I tried out for the closing ceremonies and whatever, a couple hundred skaters made it. And then they asked me to carry in the Canadian flag and blah, blah, blah. So, and I said, it was the best moment in my life so far. Right. And I said to him, these little insights about, whether you're a painter or you're an ex-Olympian maybe, or what your hobbies are. My son he's a polyglot. He knows many, many languages. I said, that's what's going to make people want to talk to you. So you absolutely should be including the interesting personal things that describe your whole self in your personal branding document. Don't hide them. They make you more interesting. Okay, the third principle of personal branding is, I mentioned before, your personal brand not only can change over time, it absolutely should change. People get stressed out sometimes and they said, I get these emails, Andrea, we worked on my personal brand a year ago, but things have changed. I think I need an update. I'm like, well, first of all, congratulations, right? This is fantastic news. If your personal brand is changing, that means things are happening for you. The other reason that I share this with people, usually in the first, if I'm doing one-on-one coaching, it's like in the first session, I say, don't be afraid to write something down on your personal branding template, because literally an hour later or tomorrow or next week, you can change it. In fact, not only can you, but you should change it, right? So your personal brand should change over time. A recent example for me, I told you my son turned 20. Another one was a while ago, I was asked by Inc. magazine to start being a columnist at Inc. magazine. And I was like, wow, that should be on my personal branding document, right? Where am I going to put it? I don't like to have more than 15. I've already got 14. Do I really need a single box for ink? And then as I was looking at my document, I realized you can see on the right-hand side there, it says thought leader. So I combined my podcast, my ink column, my consumer psychology research that I did when I was a doctoral student and when I was in academia. That all came together as thought leader. I didn't have thought leader as a box before. I had those things all separated. So I merged them when I got the ink column. That's just an example. So things for you will change as well. And then you'll be updating your template. All right. What do you think the most common mistake is? I actually can't see the chat right now, but if you can throw into the chat, what do you think the most common mistake is? By the way, I was going to say there's no wrong answer. There is a right answer here, but people do make lots of mistakes, right? One of the most common mistakes that I hear people guess here is, well, what about being afraid of being too self-promotional? So I'm afraid to say the things that I should be saying about myself. Oh, I see these here. Using vague descriptors. Yes, you need to be specific. Excellent, Laura. Not being yourself. Yes, you're not copying others, right? Not promoting ourselves. Lisa, that's exactly what I was saying. So these are all excellent, and they are all things that we absolutely need to work on when we're communicating about ourselves. But the most common mistake, it's probably not a surprise to you. It's what I said before, copying others. We are social animals. We see other people that are successful and we emulate them. So I just want to really underscore this. Early in your career, copying others and trying different styles is a great idea, right? Like, how are you going to know really what works for you? And you won't even really know what your passions are. But once you hit like mid-career, if you want to get into the fast lane, if you want to, it's not even just about getting promoted. It's also about feeling satisfied about what you're doing, feeling like a self-satisfaction. If you focus on your unique strengths, your unique superpowers, and your unique passions, avoid copying others, you're sure to be more successful and more satisfied. All right, so we have this process here. We spend a lot of time, as you can guess by what I just shared with you, articulating your personal brand. You've got internal inputs, you've got external inputs. We could do personality tests. We look at archetypes. We have all of these things. And then you start communicating. So this is, your LinkedIn profile. I know many of you, we connected on LinkedIn, or, I communicate through my podcast, or you communicate about yourself. The most direct way to communicate about yourself is your self-introduction, right? Because it's words from you about you. So that's the most direct way of influencing your personal brand or communicating your personal brand. There are also indirect ways, right? Like your tone of voice, your body language, your clothing, your Zoom meeting background, your headshot. I guess that's pretty direct, but you get the idea. There's direct, there's indirect, it's online, it's in person. We are constantly communicating and reinforcing and updating what people are thinking about us. I've recently created I'm obsessed with this topic of personal branding now. You probably got that memo, especially if you follow me on LinkedIn or listen to the podcast. I recently created a self-assessment that I really hope you'll take. There's only, I think, just over 50 people have taken it so far. But here's your opportunity.
I asked ChatGPT to build me a Shopify store, and it said,
Okay, so I created this. It's really a self-assessment focused on personal branding, where it takes you through a lot of the process of developing your personal brand and how to think about your personal brand. There's about 30 questions. There's really 3 reasons why you might want to take this quiz, which you can find at talkabouttalk.com/personal brand. I try to make it as easy as possible for you with the URL there. If you go to that website, you'll see it's a Google form, and there's about 30 questions. 3 reasons why you might want to do this. So first of all, it's an opportunity for self-reflection. Literally with every question, you'll be thinking like, yeah, that's true. That's what I do. Or that's what I think about that. Or that's what my priority is or isn't. The second thing is when you're done, if you click see all the scores or something like that, at the end, there's a link. It'll show you the summary of everyone's results combined, right? So it's not by person, but it's everyone's combined. So you'll say, well, you know, I said that I'm only posting on LinkedIn, but other people are posting on TikTok and X and whatever. And so you can see what everybody else's answer is. And the third thing is I'm using the results of this for some research that I'm doing on personal branding. So I would love to get the statistical significance up on that. If you can do that survey, that would help me, and it will also help you in terms of you assessing your progress on your own personal brand. And it's only like 30 questions. You're probably wondering though, based on this process, we articulate it and then we communicate it and then we're constantly updating it. If you're like most people, you'd probably feel, I don't know, like overwhelmed, right? Where do I begin? How do I actually, so I see what Andrea's finished, or at least finished for today, personal branding template looks like where would I even begin? She's told me to write my company and my geography, but what else do I do? Well, I can help you with that. Starting in September, I've got a 1-month boot camp focused on your personal brand, but it's for professionals, right? So it's for folks that want to do this from a professional perspective and really establishing your professional identity. If you go to talkabouttalk.com/SEPT, September 2024, there's all sorts of information about it there. And you can also scan the QR code that's there that'll take you to the same page. I'm going to share with you just a little bit of what you get there. We focus, so it's 4 weeks. It's the month of September, but you get a lot. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you get and how we teach it. So the first thing that you get is you will walk away from this boot camp, I promise, feeling very confident of your self-introduction. So I'm going to teach you a framework. We are going to craft your personal narrative that you can also adapt to just about any context that you can think of, personal or professional, okay? And I promise you that it's going to boost your confidence. So perhaps for the first time in a long time, you're going to be able to, you know, when you're in a meeting, whether it's in person or online, and they say, we're going to go around and we're all going to introduce ourselves now. And someone starts introducing themselves and this happens every time I teach this, people, I see these heads nodding, right?
It will be done when it already played it everything earlier.
So I just muted. Please, if you're not on mute, please put yourself on mute. So the meeting leader says, let's go around the screen or around the table and introduce ourselves. And you're like, okay. And then you half listen to the first person. Then you're like, I better think about what I'm going to say. How long should I talk? Should I say something personal? Should I say something about that project no. So you're not even listening to one word that anyone is saying, right? And then it comes to you. And if there was a quiz for everyone's name and anything about them, you would definitely fail. So the first thing you're going to get from this bootcamp is a framework so that you can confidently introduce yourself in any context every time. But wait, there's more. No, there's 3 things. The second thing that we're going to focus on, of course, is developing your unique personal brand. So this is going to be integrated into your self-introduction. We're going to go through a process of self-discovery. You're going to do some like blank sheet of paper. I'm going to give you prompts. You're going to answer them. I'm going to talk to you about how to synthesize them. You're also going to get input from other people, professional and personal contexts that will feed into your personal brand. We can also look at personality tests and archetypes. So it's really self-discovery. Then this articulation step is really about controlling your, and we're going to focus on your online presence and your visual identity. So this is really the same thing. This is like how you show up visually and online. So everything from your punctuality to, you know, what photo do you have? What name do you have on the bottom of your square? Like all of these things are important and feed into your personal brand. And perhaps most importantly, you're going to walk out of there with a completed personal branding template, like the one that I showed you of mine. It's going to start with basically looking like a matrix that you're going to fill words in, and you're going to walk out with a finished personal branding template. The third thing that we're going to do from then, just to show you how easy it is to go from the creating or articulating page to the communicating page, is we're going to focus on LinkedIn, and we're going to integrate your personal brand into your LinkedIn profile. We're going to spend some time talking about the 3 most important elements of your LinkedIn profile and how you personally, uniquely can nail that for yourself. And then, of course, we'll spend some time talking about how to make connections and post on LinkedIn. So, how do we get all of this done in 1 month? Well, it's a combination of things. It's really a multimedia, comprehensive learning experience. We have 4 live one-on-one coaching sessions with a program that I've tested and I know that it works. So you can participate in those. And yes, I record them because it often happens. I know you're busy. And people tell me that sometimes the recorded ones, they slow it down, they take notes, and they find it even more helpful. We have 4 live, small group, private coaching sessions. And lately, when I do this, I've also been providing like a bonus Q&A where it's like I just show up and the boot campers ask me whatever questions that they have. I also give you access to an online course. This is an online course that I created about personal branding. It is very comprehensive. It has everything in it that you need, but people generally, they want the live coaching sessions and contact with me directly. So this on-demand course includes 10 videos of me teaching you what to do, and also a very comprehensive workbook. It's about 30 pages. It includes templates and quizzes and places for notes and some of the vocabulary that we're going to be using and so on. So you get this comprehensive workbook. And of course, that also includes your branding template. And I'm also going to be sending you a PowerPoint version of it with some directions for how to customize it further for you. So it's a really comprehensive, like I said, multimedia learning experience. And furthermore, you will also have access to a virtual community. All of the people that are signed up, or I shouldn't say all of them, I make it sound like there's hundreds of them. It is a small group of people that you're going to be working with. And I have sort of a confession to make here. This is, the truth. Not that I lie, but I just want to underscore the surprise that I had. I thought in my coaching career, doing one-on-one coaching was like the creme de la creme, like the most powerful way to learn. Well, in my experience, the folks in the boot camp are getting at least as much, right? And I realized I wasn't giving my clients enough credit. You all are smart enough to learn, not just from me, but also from other people. So when they ask questions, you're smart enough to think, what would that question be in my context of my career and my life and my experience? And then they have a new learning that otherwise might not have come up in private coaching. So you're going to have access to this supportive virtual community, and we're going to create a Slack group, and everyone's going to sign a non-disclosure agreement where what happens in boot camp stays in boot camp, and then we can share things. We're going to share our personal branding templates with each other and help each other improve, provide each other with constructive feedback. And it's also very efficient because it's 24/7 access to the group, and then we can answer, right, and help support, keep each other accountable, and all that good stuff. You're probably wondering how much this costs. I know you're wondering. Here it is. The full price for this entire multimedia bootcamp is $950. Again, you walk away feeling confident about your self introduction, your personal branding template. You've nailed it. You've learned how to control your narrative. You've identified the themes that are going to provide you with focus and direction and confidence, right? And you've also updated your LinkedIn profile. So those are kind of the 3 main deliverables, all for $950 for a limited time until August 23rd at midnight. I cut the coupon off for then. You can save $250. So it's now just $700. And if you go to talkabouttalk.com and go to the checkout page, you can just enter the discount code there. I would love to see some of you there. I'm also absolutely happy to answer any questions that you have. So here's the opportunity. Again, the code is September SEPT250. You have to get that exactly to save $250. You're going to have this opportunity to experience this. I call it like a multimedia learning experience, right? Because you've got the private coaching, you've got access to the videos, you've got the workbooks, you've got the open Q&A, you've got the Slack group. It's almost like there's no excuses. And that said, if you're thinking, gosh, I don't have time for this, no one in the group has ever said to me that it took more time than they thought, right? They have said, I found it to be more satisfying and the work was fun. So I ended up doing more than I thought I would do. But no one, I absolutely respect your time. I really, truly do. I know I'm working on a workshop right now for some physicians, some medical executives, and the people that are helping me, that hired me to organize it, they're like, these physicians are really busy, probably busier than most of your clients. I'm like, with all due respect, all of my clients are really busy. I need to respect everyone's time, not just the medical physicians. So I want to really underscore that. I absolutely respect your time. This is going to be extremely productive and also extremely rewarding, personally and professionally. So you can immerse yourself in this powerful personal branding and professional identity exercise. And again, this will provide you with an opportunity to control your narrative, to provide you with focus and direction in what you're going to do, what you're going to pursue. It's really almost about providing you with purpose, right? Like when these are your strengths, these are your superpowers, you feel a lot more purpose. And of course, also your elevated confidence. So I hope you'll go to the website, talkabouttalk.com, Sept2024, and you can read more about it there. And now I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, not just about the bootcamp, of course, but also about the definition of personal branding, how to articulate your personal brand, how to develop it, how to communicate it. Any questions that you have, I'm absolutely happy to answer. Oh, I gotta thank you. Who's got a question for me? I'm looking in the chat, but I would love it if someone could. Galriz?
Thanks, Andrea. It was very helpful and eye-opening. So the example about the immigrant is really resonating with me because I'm myself an immigrant. The thing I would like to ask is, I think you mentioned you will cover some of the vocabulary, and what I found so far in the interviews and everything is that it's important. It's not important what you say, it's important how you say it. And as a second language learner, sometimes I have difficulty finding the correct choice of vocabulary. And so, for example, giving example, say, yeah, I think if we do this, this is that, and then that is very shallow. Whereas if I say, yeah, based on my experience in the past 10 years, and so, you see how it comes out strong. And so I only became aware of it recently, and I still have to work on it. So is there anything about, the way of communication, the art of communication?
Yes, fantastic question, Galriz. Thank you. And your English is excellent. I wish my second language sounded as eloquent as your second language does. That's all I can say. So when I'm coaching folks in communication skills and of course on their personal brand, I am not a fan of elevator pitches or elevator speeches, people call them, or of scripts. So I just want to make really clear. I had a client recently who I'm like, were you listening to anything? He actually texted me and said, Andrea, I'm about to go in an interview. Can you just send me my elevator pitch? I was like, no, we do not memorize anything because your memorized pitch, first of all, two main reasons. It sounds memorized and it's not customized for your audience, right? You need to look the person in the eye and think about what matters to them. So here's the beauty of working on your personal brand. In each of those boxes, it's not just like a theme, right? We've actually thought about the words that you want to say over. So they are, again, it's not a script. It's not like you're writing out a paragraph, but you've got either single words or little phrases that you want to say about yourself. So I was coaching a guy recently and he's like, he was a CEO who ran a company that got bought. And so he helped manage the integration, and then he was gone. He lost his job. So he's a very successful CEO, but so we worked on his personal brand, and we said the word for him was trailblazer. He's like, I've always been a trailblazer, and he used that as like an anchor in his conversations that he had. And so that's just an example of one word. Sometimes it's like a string of words, right? Like this other woman, this other executive that I was telling you about, she's a bold, inspiring leader who creates impact. And she's so bold that she would actually say that about herself, right? She'd say, hi, my name is Jane. I'm a bold, inspiring leader who creates impact. Let me tell you what I mean by that, right? So I'm going to teach you little phrases about yourself, like I am a, and fill the blank in about you, but also phrases. And you mentioned one of them, Golriz. You said, for example, saying, based on my experience. That is beautiful because I mentioned this in one of my podcast episodes. When you introduce your comments in a meeting or in an interview with based on my experience, you are framing for them, and they probably won't even be aware of it, right? But you're framing for them. Here's what my experience is, right? And you're also saying, I don't know everything, but this I do know, right? And so you're adding value. I share this with a lot of junior folks who often are more likely to suffer from, not speaking up or being shy or having imposter syndrome. And I'll say, let's brainstorm like what you do know. And then you can raise your hand and you can say, you're brand new to the company, right? And they're like, what do you think? I was coaching one woman who was working at one of the big banks in Toronto. She got moved from like a DEI role and customer experience role to real estate. And she said, I'm in these meetings, Andrea, and my confidence has hit the floor. I don't know what to say. They asked me what I think, and I'm like, I'm not qualified to talk about real estate. I said, that's not why they moved you there. They moved you there because of your your CX experience. So you need to say, based on my experience and expertise in CX, here's what I think about this plan, like literally the real estate plan. And she's like, and so while I'm not teaching you a script, I will be giving you little phrases like, based on my experience, based on my expertise, things like that, that will hopefully like change everything for you, right? So Ash has a question. Do you cover anything about navigating and controlling your narrative in the workplace? I mean, this is navigating and control. I think is Ash here? Yeah. If you want to elaborate, I think you might mean if people have misperceptions. This sounds a little bit tautological because I'm answering with the question, right? But your personal brand, when you've taken the time to think about what the themes are about you that you want to reinforce with other people, you control the narrative. So you tell them what you want them to think about you. And this could include like, you have an experience at work where you give a presentation and it doesn't go as well. Right? So there's maybe this bit of a negative reputation effect going on. So you say, personally, privately, you say, that sucked. Here's what I'm going to do next time. Then you go to your boss and you say, I'm really disappointed in what happened there. And then you take control of the narrative and you say, I am a resilient person. I'm smart enough and tenacious enough. What I did was I got a video of the meeting and I watched it, and there are 3 things that I think I did wrong. I want to run them by you and give you and share with you a plan, right? All of a sudden your boss is like, wow, like resilience, thorough, committed, growth mindset, right? So this is what I mean by controlling the narrative. If that's what this question is, Ash, you can turn a negative into a positive. For those of you who have been watching the Olympics, I said this, my mom was visiting last week, and it was early on, the American men were in the gymnastics and they were just falling all over the place. And I said, that guy's going to get a TED Talk. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, these athletes that are on stage that have these incredible stories and then they go out and they fail, they have an opportunity to like knock it out of the park for the rest of their career. It's almost like you can celebrate your failure, like truly, not just embrace your failure, but really celebrate your failure because you're telling a story, right? You create, Danielle, I love this too. I'm like, I wish I had more. So I actually heard a confession. Hillary Clinton said, I've never had, these experiences that some of my whatever competitors or colleagues have had. She said, my background is actually pretty boring. And it's almost like I need to invent something, not that she would do that. But I heard her talk about this once, like she doesn't have that thing to overcome. So if you have it could be like, you failed at a presentation, or it could be something else. You can turn that into a story just by controlling your narrative and making it part of your brand.
Hi, Andrea. Yeah, I think like in hindsight, when I asked a question and I thought about it, it really just makes sense. I think like even going through this process would actually help you with navigating those situations because you know yourself a little bit more, I guess, and then you figure out how to deal with it because you're more aligned with your core values by doing this.
Yeah. I have another example, Ash. coaching a woman so I've done several of these boot camps now, and there's certain people's stories that really resonate with the rest of the boot campers. This is what I mean about the power of the boot camp, right? Because you learn from each other. This woman is a physician, and she deals with a lot of I'm not going to say what city she's in. I don't want to. She is a physician though, and it is a woman. And she said she's really smart. She went through med school. Of course, she's smart, and she's working in a big city, and she's got the good job. And she said, I kind of lack confidence. And she's like, part of it is like, she said, I have a wicked sense of humor, like wicked, like I'm always cracking jokes, but it's not always appropriate, especially when I'm around sick people, right? And she said, but then every now and then I'll say something to like to the parent of a child that is really like in crisis. And she said, I'll say something that's a little bit funny, and they'll like hysterically start laughing. And I said, so your superpower is a combination of, this medical knowledge that you have combined with this ability to turn the most grave, literally grave of circumstances into something that's lighter, that people appreciate. And she's like, yeah, that's true. And I said, it doesn't mean you're telling inappropriate jokes or making inappropriate comments, but so. And before she messaged me and mentioned this into the boot camp. She said she was always trying to hide who she was, but now she has a way of thinking about it herself and for talking about it to other people. So she now tells her colleagues and even her patients, like, sometimes I see the bright side or the funny side of things when even in the most dire of circumstances, and people seem to appreciate that. So she's controlling a narrative around her, I guess, comedic superpowers. Yeah. It's like I said, sometimes the thing that you are hiding about yourself, actually, there's a way of saying it and thinking about it that can make it really, really powerful. Anyone else have any questions before we go? I really appreciate the fantastic questions that have come up already. I hope that you will follow me on LinkedIn. You will subscribe to the newsletter, which comes out every 2 weeks, where I share, of course, the power of 3. I share 3 things with you every 2 weeks. And I hope to see you in the personal branding. It's talkabouttalk.com/SEPT2024. And that, by the way, is the same, the SEPT 250 is to get $250 off. So you can save $250 with the coupon code. I really did try to make it as easy as possible for you. So if you want to message me on LinkedIn or send me an email or whatever, if you have any questions, I'm absolutely happy to answer. And I hope that some of the things you've learned here can help you develop your personal brand and your professional identity. Thank you.